Today we're going to learn how to 3D print something from start to finish. In my last video we answered the question, what is 3D printing? In this video I'm going to show you how to 3D print something from your file to having it in hand. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, picking your 3D model. So the way I like to look at this problem is that there's two ways to get a 3D model. You can either design it yourself or you can go to a free online website and see what they have to offer for the object that you want. A website I like to use a lot when picking my 3D models from a website is called Thingiverse. So we can just type in Thingiverse to our web browser. Okay, so now that we're on Thingiverse, as you guys can see, it's just a whole different list of 3D models. This is just a fraction of what they have to offer, but we said we want a headphone stand, right? So we can search up headphone stand. A whole list of different headphone stands come up. So we can pick one that we think we like. Kind of like the look of this one right here. So this is an extremely important part when downloading your 3D model. So you got your 3D model, you like it, it's from a website you like, you want to click this button right here. It says download all files. So the files downloaded, as you can see, they're in the top right corner. And here we have our headphone stand zip file. So if we just open it, all of our files will be available in here. And this is super important. So whenever you guys download a 3D model, they'll usually go to your downloads folder and they come nicely organized in these folders. So these three folders, README, license, and images, you can just ignore. The images are just an image of what the 3D model looks like. The license, I guess, is a license, and README I've never read it, so it's worked pretty well for me so far. So the file you guys should only care about is files. Now this part might seem a little bit confusing. So here you see a bunch of different models and you're like, well, I just downloaded a headphone stand. Why is there like 5 different models? Well, that's because a lot of the times these come in parts that you can either assemble or print nicely together. So what do I mean by this? I mean, as you guys can see, they're labeled different names. You have headphone rest, headphone stand, mainframe part 1, mainframe part 2. So this headphone stand is cut up into several different parts so that you can print the parts separately and then assemble it. Think of it like IKEA. You don't buy the bed fully made. You buy it in different sections. You get the parts and then you put it together yourself. That's kind of what it's like with this. Not all 3D models are like this. Some just come what they call print in place. So you print it and then it just becomes fully assembled. Others come like this, where they come in different parts and you have to assemble it afterwards. Now, if it's a good 3D model, you won't need glue, nuts, and bolts or anything like that to put it together. Usually the model is designed so that the parts can just snap together in place. But I guess we'll see based off this model. Now, you guys also might be wondering, okay, cool, we were able to get a 3D model from a free website. Well, what if I want to design my own? How would that work? Good question. So I'll just use a super basic 3D modeling software like Tinkercad. And the rule is pretty much the same for any 3D modeling software that you use. Okay, so let's go to Tinkercad and I will create a new design. We can just name this design test. So whenever you're working in your 3D modeling software, you're gonna do your thing, you're gonna design it, you're gonna sketch it up. All right, cool. So let's just keep it super simple again. Let's just throw in a cube. My object's done, I wanna export it. So you press export right here, export. Now other 3D modeling softwares might not have the option to press STL, but don't worry about it. Sometimes it automatically does it. Just as long as you get it in a 3D modeling form and your slicing software can accept it, you're good to go. Okay, so as you guys can see here, if we go to our downloads, the test that we just downloaded is right here. And this is a 3D model that we can load into our slicing software. So now that we have our files, we need a slicing software. So this moves us over to our second extremely important step, which is the slicing software. So in my last video, I went over different slicer softwares to download, and now I'm gonna show you which one you should get. So slicing software is something that you will not avoid when 3D printing. Slicing is basically turning the 3D models that we just downloaded into a language that the 3D printer can understand. So it's like writing instructions for the 3D printer, basically. It might sound a little bit confusing at first, but don't worry, it's super simple. Now, what I like to use and what a lot of people in the 3D printing space like to use is called Cura, Ultimaker Cura slicing software. And I'll show you guys how to download this. So just search up Cura download. And then you're going to want to go to this link right here. This is the logo for Cura. Then just press download. After you hit download, you're probably going to be brought to this page right here. And from here, you're going to want to hit Ultimate Cura for Windows. Obviously, if you're using Linux, then you can download the one for Linux. If you're using Mac, download the one for Mac. I'm using Windows, so I'll download it for Windows. Okay, so as you guys can see here, Cura is downloading in the top right corner. Okay, so as you guys can see, the Ultimaker Cura slicing software downloaded right here. So you're gonna wanna press on it, Then you're going to be brought to this page and it says, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? Press yes. So you guys are going to want to wait for it to load. Then press next, press I agree, next, install. Okay, then you guys are going to want to press finish. So now you're going to be thrown into the Cura software. So just press next. We can ignore all this. I already have my printer set up in here. I guess it just remembered my old settings. But what you guys are going to want to do, if it looks anything like this, you guys are going to want to go to press add printer. Then when you add your printer, if you have an Ultimaker printer, you can press the Ultimaker printer. If you have a non-Ultimaker printer, so pretty much any other branded printer, then press non-Ultimaker. If you can add your printer through the network, I'm pretty sure a lot of the Bamboo Lab printers do this. Go ahead and do it right now. If not, if you have a little bit of an older printer like the Ender 3, you can press a non-networked printer. So this is kind of cool. So as you guys can see, Cura has a huge list of 3D printers that you guys can pick from, and I guarantee that the 3D printer that you guys have, unless it's custom built, it will be available on here. So just go ahead and pick your 3D printer, press add, and then you'll be good to go. So me personally, I already have my printer set up, so we're good to go. So I will use it as an example, my FL Sun Super Racer. So as you guys can see here, this is what your 3D printer build plate will look like. So this is the build plate for my 3D printer. I don't know, for some reason, it also shows the supports of the 3D printer, like the actual design of it. It's pretty cool, but all that matters is where I can fit my 3D model. And this circular plate right here is where I can 3D print within. So you guys might have a rectangular 3D printer or a square 3D printer or a triangle 3D printer. But mine right now is a circle, and I'll load in the test I took from Tinkercad. And as you guys can see here, here's the cube that I designed. Well, I didn't really design it, but here's the cube that we got from Tinkercad. And then also you guys might be wondering, oh, well, where's the file that we got from Thingiverse? And I'll show you guys how to do that as well. So as you guys can see, here we go to our downloads. Here's the headphone stand. Again, we go to files. And you guys can see here, we have all of these different files. So you're gonna wanna press here, the file button, and then you're gonna wanna open this here again. And then you guys can just drag this file folder all the way to here, copy to downloads, copy here. And then see, it shows up in Ultimaker Cura. Press files, and then you guys can load in all the files that you guys have. So these are all the files for the headphone stand. And as you guys can see here, when you load them in, they just look super disorganized, but don't worry. This is where the fun part begins. We get to orient how our prints are gonna be 3D printed. So as you guys can see, again, in the bottom left, here's a list of all the objects we have within the slicing software. And we can just drag the different files we have into the build plate. You might be wondering why these objects turn yellow. When these objects are yellow, that means that they are safely within the build plate and the printer will be able to print these objects no problem. However, if you drag them out a bit, notice how when I drag it past the circle, it turns gray. So that means the 3D printer can't print within that space. So that makes sense. So it kind of just shows you the area in which you have to 3D print. So it gets a little bit tricky, but you guys get to organize in which way your 3D models get to be printed. So obviously, if we print it like this, it won't work because there's a conflict. The 3D objects intersect here. So you're gonna wanna move around the 3D models in a way that's strategic and a way that you can fit all of them. Sometimes you won't be able to fit all the parts, and that just means you'll need to do multiple print sessions, which is totally fine. Just means a little bit more time being spent. And here, I'll just show you guys that you can rotate the 3D models in different ways, and just all the different ways that you can orient the 3D model. Okay, so as you guys can see here, I have the 3D model completely organized and ready to print. So there are a few things that you should know before pressing the slice button. So first and foremost, if you look underneath your print, you see a few different colors. So you see blue, red, and then obviously the yellow, which we already discussed. So the blue and the red. Blue means that that print, that object, I should say, is gonna stick directly to the bed of your printer. And just so you guys know, this right here, this is the bed of your 3D printer. This is where the first few layers of your 3D print are gonna start. So when it's blue, that means it's good. It's gonna stick to the bed and it's just gonna build up from there. However, the red part is when it gets a little bit tricky. Red means that there is no support to that part of the model. So what does that mean, you ask? That means that you're gonna need to 3D print supports to go where that red part is. Now don't worry, supports automatically generate, so you don't really have to do any complicated work. You just need to keep in mind that they will affect the look of your 3D print. Now, 3D printing companies are working on making supports basically invisible to the 3D print and making it look as though they don't affect the 3D print at all. But where we are today is that with supports, usually you can mess around with the settings. However, they do affect the look of your 3D print and they make it look a little bit messy. Really, it's not that noticeable, but if you're a neat freak, then you will notice it. But it's just important to keep in mind. So for example, if you're 3D printing something like an Iron Man helmet and you're at the faceplate part, well, you want the faceplate to be the prettiest part of the print, right? So I wouldn't 3D print it, assume my hand is the bed, I wouldn't 3D print it like this, because then you're just gonna have supports all around here that make the front of it look ugly, right? So it all depends on what you want to 3D print and how you're gonna 3D print it. But for this headphone stand, it's not really here to look super nice, and the supports won't really be too noticeable. So again, just keep that in mind with what you're 3D printing. So just to show you guys kind of the evolution of supports, this part was printed on a really old 3D printer, and I added supports from the bottom, as you guys can see, and I'm pretty sure it's kind of obvious to see where the supports were, but then I printed the exact same part on a newer 3D printer, and you guys can just see the difference in quality. It's so much better on the newer 3D printer. So it's just really important that you guys know that this was the evolution of supports and really how they work. It's also important to know what supports do. So when you're 3D printing, and obviously we can see here in our 3D model, so there are definitely certain parts of our 3D model that are floating in the air. And one of those parts is right here at the top. As you guys can see, we have the red underneath, which shows the supports that need to be put here. Now, supports are crucial because the nozzle, just to visualize it, the nozzle is gonna be going up. Imagine my mouse is the nozzle, extruding the filament. The nozzle is gonna be going up like this, all cool, up, 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 up. And then once it reaches here, the filament that it extrudes out is just gonna fall. When it's here, it has something to build off of, which is the filament beneath it. So it's building, it's building, it's building, it's building, it's building, but then when it gets here, there's nothing underneath it. So it just falls, and that's why we have supports. So the 3D printer will print up supports that go up through here, and then the filament will have something to build onto. So if that explanation doesn't make sense, I would just recommend printing something really small with no supports and just see what happens. You'll see what I mean, and you'll just recognize how important they are and really how most prints are kind of impossible without them. But obviously, with a bit of fine tuning, you can get away with not having supports in certain spots. But again, I do stress it is important to have supports. So now we're gonna go over the settings in your slicing software. This, I mentioned it in my last video, super simple. You guys don't need to worry about your settings. If you really do not care about your settings, you don't care about the engineering behind the 3D print, and you just wanna 3D print things because it's cool, you can skip this part. But I won't go too in depth into it, but again, all of these settings are pre-configured. So they're already set. If I just press print right now, it'll just give me the most basic 3D print, nothing super complicated, but it's good to know. And obviously if you want to be in this for the long run and you want to 3D print for a while, I would definitely recommend learning the different settings that go along with your 3D printer. They're not super important, but again, it's good to know, and it's a skill that you will learn. However, one important thing is that you won't learn this all in one go. This is gonna take several attempts. I mentioned in my last video, you will fail. You're gonna have failed prints, and that's okay, don't worry. Just know that with time, you'll be able to improve settings, you'll be able to modify settings, you'll be able to really hone in on your skills for 3D printing. So just keep that in mind. But right now, I would recommend definitely knowing the infill setting and the temperature for which you're setting. Infill is basically how hollow and how dense your 3D print will be. 15% is pretty good. If you go to 100%, it'll be super dense. If you go to 0, well then there'll be no filling and it'll really just be the walls. Material, obviously you're gonna wanna know what temperature your nozzle is gonna be at and what temperature your build plate will be at. These can definitely be modified based on different materials you're using, so it's definitely good to go over these as you're 3D printing. There is something I would change in the settings though, which is in the supports. I would change them from normal to tree. This will save you material and it'll also make them easier to remove. So now the special button, slice button. So based on the 3D model you have, sometimes it'll take longer to slice, sometimes it'll take shorter to slice. If you have a really complex 3D model that you're putting in the slicing software, it might take a minute max. Obviously, if you have something super simple, then it'll take like a few seconds. So at the bottom here, you guys can see that the print will take a total of 16 hours and 53 minutes, and it's going to take up 352 grams of filament. So usually in a standard roll of filament of PLA, which costs around 15 to 25 bucks on Amazon, you're going to get 1,000 grams in that total roll. So this is going to be taking 352 of those grams. And for those of you who didn't know already, yes, 3D printing does take an extremely long time. Of course, there are printers that are working on being really fast, which is really good, but most prints will definitely take a few hours at the least. Okay, so after you press slice, you're gonna wanna go to preview. And this is a really important part of the 3D print. So obviously the blue bits are the supports that we saw earlier that needed to be placed. And then the yellow/red parts are just the 3D model. The 3D model changed, and you might be wondering, well, why did the 3D model change? Why didn't it just stay yellow? And that's because it shows you the different layer lines that are actually gonna be made while the 3D printer is printing. So it's pretty cool. As you guys can see, all these little lines within the 3D model, and that's basically how your nozzle is going to extrude the plastic filament. So it is pretty cool, it is pretty interesting, and it's good to see how your print is going to look on the print bed. So unless you're using different types of filament colors, all of this will stay the same color. Obviously, if you have a basic printer like the Ender 3, or like I'm going to demonstrate later, the FL Sun Super Racer, it can only really take one type of filament color at a time. Obviously, it can take several different types of filament, but only one at a time. So if I pick black or white to print in, that's what it's gonna stay in, and the whole model, including the supports, will be in white filament. So once you're ready to 3D print, you might be wondering, well, how do I get it to the printer? So if your printer is able to print through Wi-Fi or just wirelessly, then you press print and send to printer, make sure everything's good on your 3D printer, and then you're good to go. But if that's not the case, and you have a printer that requires a miniature SD card, then just listen to this part of the video. So you guys are gonna need an adapter, USB to micro SD, plug it into your computer. And then here it says save to disk. Once my computer reads it, it will change to save to removable drive. So as you guys can see, my printer has read the removable disk. So it says save to removable drive. You're gonna wanna hit that, and then it'll automatically upload to the micro SD card. So once it uploads, you guys can hit eject. Cool, we're good to go. We can remove it from the adapter. Now with the micro SD card, you're probably gonna have a port for this on your 3D printer. Even if you have a wireless 3D printer that can print wirelessly, you're still most likely gonna have the micro SD card port. So I'm gonna show you guys how to put that into your printer. Okay, so now I have one of my 3D printers here, and I'm gonna demonstrate how to use the micro SD card. So after you've uploaded your 3D model to the micro SD card, you're probably gonna have a little port like this somewhere on the 3D printer. So you're gonna wanna insert the micro SD card into it. Just pops in like that. Then, based on the type of control panel you have on your 3D printer, you're gonna wanna go to select the file. So print, and then as you can see, automatically all of the files on the micro SD card shows up here that the 3D printer can read. And here's our test from earlier that we got from Tinkercad. Once I press test and I hit print, it's gonna print. So another thing you guys need to keep in mind, which is really important, is the level of your bed. So this is a crucial step when 3D printing. Nowadays, 3D printers already have a bed leveling system. However, some older 3D models and some newer ones that are cheaper have a manual bed leveling system. And trust me, if you have never manually leveled a bed before, you're about to feel some serious pain. But that's all right, don't worry. There are several YouTube tutorials out there that you guys can look at for how to level a bed manually. You just need to know that no matter what kind of printer you have, that your bed is being leveled. Otherwise, this will lead to several issues that are gonna happen throughout the print. So once your bed is level, just make sure that you have your filament loaded in. And once you have your desired filament loaded in, of course, in my last video, I mentioned different types of filament that you can use, such as PLA, TPU, PETG, etc. Doesn't matter which one you use, just as long as it's loaded in and you have enough of it for the print. So then you guys can go ahead and press print, and then of course let the printer do its job. And after the amount of time has passed and your print is ready and no problems have happened, it's really just the post-processing time. Of course, let your bed cool down for a little bit of time. You don't have to do this, but I just do it because then it makes it easier to pull the print off of the bed. And then once you're there, you're pretty much good to go. Just remove any supports that are necessary. Of course, newer printers make it super easy to remove supports, and it is kind of satisfying. There you have it, folks. That's how you 3D print something from start to finish. So that about does it for today's video, guys. Of course, if you have any questions about 3D printing, leave them in the comments below. I'll answer every question I get. I'll see you guys in the next video, and until then, keep building. Subscribe for more engineering content.